What's up, everybody? We're back again with another episode of Meet My Beat. I'm Zach Waters, aka Pretty Sister. Today I want to introduce to you a track I co-wrote and produced called Sexy Ladies by the group Superfruit. Now, Superfruit is Scott Hoying and Mitch Grassi. They're also in another group called Pentatonics, an amazing a cappella group. So obviously these guys are incredible singers. I had the pleasure of working with them on a few songs, Guy.exe and another song called The Promise. I also had the pleasure of touring with them as their guitar player, running track. Unfortunately, they only did one tour and they only did one record, and it's an incredible record. I suggest you guys listen to it if you haven't heard the whole thing. It's so good. Not just the tracks that I did, but the tracks that everybody did on it are amazing. With Sexy Ladies, I really wanted to evoke the feeling of like a summertime kind of G-Funk West Coast, Mariah Carey. What's the song called? She Wanna Dance with Jay? Fantasy, Heartbreaker, with like the guitars. And as we break this track down, you'll see some of the influences that I brought into this one. So let's get into Sexy Ladies by Superfruit. Let's start with the drums. We have the intro. That's just all the drums. They kind of build up, you know? It's the drums. For the intro, what I did, I like to just like kind of bounce them all down. I threw a automation on this channel EQ. Just so that I have it automated to kind of, you know, do this little frequency sweep. So it kind of sounds like it's, you know, maybe on the radio or something like that. It's like a little radio intro, you know, different scenic mode. So as far as the drums go, we've got these live hats, Abbey Road drum or something. I use that if I want like live hi-hat feels. I'll just use that. We got our kick. I believe this is a Vengeance kick, actually, by the name VPE1. I'm pretty sure that's a Vengeance kick. That's the main kick. And then we have this added kick that when you listen to it by itself, I have the low end EQ'd out of it. So that added with this bass drum, you get an extra little clicky front end that helps it like punch through the mix a little bit more. And then we've got our first snare, just a little tiny disco snare that I've added some low end to give it a little extra punch, a little extra, you know? And then we have this. So that snare's a little crispier than the last one. I have all my drums going to a bus, an auxiliary bus. So it's not doing a whole lot, but this is a really good secret. There's a preset on this compressor called The Glue by Cytomic called Pop Snap, and I usually add it to like every snare drum, but sometimes I just put it on the drum bus, like where I'm sending all of the drums. Let's see what it sounds like without it. So with it, it's a lot punchier. It's also a lot louder, so that's like, sometimes you're going to perceive that as just being better, but it works for me. Let's see what else we have. So we got our kicks and our snares. And then we have a clap. Shifted off the grid a little bit. This kind of makes like a disco clap, I call it. It really kind of makes this like a couple people are clapping with the snare that's hitting on the grid. I have those shifted off, and then I have another clap that's behind that one, also shifted off the grid differently. You kind of get this organic snare clap combination. So and then we have another clap even happening. That one's also shifted off the grid ever so slightly. And then we have our perk bongo. Obviously I chopped it up quite a bit. Starting to really get that like disco feel. And then we have some more perk. So you can hear what this is doing just by itself. It's pretty random, but in the mix. And our bongos. It seems random and it seems chaotic, but it's just hours of kind of like either recording stuff or taking little samples from like a little sample pack or whatever, and then just chopping it up and just and mixing it with other things and chopping it and making it your own, obviously, and just seeing where you feel like it needs that little bit of rhythm. Then we get this other one. That hat on the offbeat, because we have the downbeat heavy hats, which is up here, these guys right here, which, oh, I forgot to put in. So those are like quarter notes. Then you have all these little playful perk bits, adding little moments is a big part in what I do when I'm making my drums. We've got this little whistle riser, probably like a cashmere or crash, just a standard live crash. Then we got our, I think it's called a vibratone. And when I was talking about like West Coast influence, quick kit, yeah, hip hop, especially from like the 90s, early 2000s. I grew up here in LA, so Battle Cat, DJ Quick, big influences for me. And then we also have this little rattle happening. So like all together. Just like interesting little moments. And I think that idea is from Heartbreaker. Mariah Carey, like it had those, I think it has the vibratone in it. We have a conga, little conga. It's probably like a Logic little MIDI instrument that I just bounce down. You know, if you listen to these parts like soloed, they sound super random, but all together just gives it this like live in a room feel, even though these drums are pretty electronic, pretty like new disco. I think that's what gives it the new disco vibe. It's the claps and the perks, little percussions. And as we get into the chorus even, I don't think, which is just a clap with a bunch of reverb on it. Just adds another little element. We also get these hats that were just kind of chopped up before. Just helps it move along a little bit more. And it kind of is a cohesive live element that kind of ties together all this other percussion that's now it kind of ties the room together like a nice rug might do. Basically all we added for the second chorus was that consistent. So in this little down chorus, we get this kind of breakdown and we get some more claps here. In order to make it sound just like more like a live room, I added 3 different layers of claps. Also this ad-lib. We're gonna get into that when we get into the vocals because it is swell. Right? And then we have this tambourine, it's the added percussion element. Go baby line and pass the drum. So that's pretty much all the drums. So now, bass. So there's just 3 bass elements. Big West Coast influence, obviously like Moog basses, Dr. Dre, Battle Cat. A lot of that West Coast sound is Moog bass. It's a massive preset, which is just like a sawtooth wave, and I have just the portamento turned up, so it slides and glides a little bit like a G1 bass. And then underneath it, I just have what's called a reggae bass, which is a Logic preset that I use a lot. It doesn't have a lot of character, it's just like a good amount of sub, and it has just a compressor. It's got a low pass filter on it that's just cutting any high end. And then it's even getting more boost in the low, all the way low range and mid range, but it sounds good. This Moog bass has the kind of grit in the character, like the distortion, but it's just doing the exact same thing. And then you gotta, if you're making a funky track, you gotta have at least 1 slap in there. All together, you get this. So that's our bass. And then we have our guitars. There's a couple of sample chops in there. There's some things that I'm playing. Sometimes I like to use samples even though I'm decently proficient at playing guitar. Dig and find like little funky guitar ideas. Sometimes I'll replay them, but sometimes they just sound so good and I don't have to do a bunch of processing, although it does take hours of chopping and like, as you can see, there's a lot of things muted and a lot of things kind of moved around, but we have this. So that's just a clean Strat, factory flange on it. Got that Miami vibe. Let's hear without everything, actually. Just like a straight DI'd guitar. And we've got a little bit of EQ, compressor, And when you're doing like a funky guitar like that, you don't want to have your attack too high on your compressor because you want the initial pluck to come through before the compressor slams it down. So that's kind of a trick for like, especially with like funky guitars, when you're doing this like bung, 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 those kind of DI'd funky guitars, like you want that attack to be a little bit slower. And then we've got a CLA guitar. I'm using it for stereo, compression, a little bit of EQ happening. And then sample delay is widening it just a little bit. We've got this wah pluck in here as well. EQ'd, kind of crazy. I think I want it to kind of stay tucked in there. Then we have these funky octaves. Oh, also there's this downbeat. Yeah, that's our guitar and bass. Drums broken down. Yeah, let's get into the synths. Kind of the most ubiquitous, I don't know if that's the right word. The most omnipresent, the most present is this piano. I play this on contact instruments, probably like the Grandeur or Alicia's Keys, one of those. And then I just compress the crap out of it. API EQ, take a lot of the low end out of it because you really want the like hard transients. This is getting sent to a micro shifter. And then it's also getting sent to a small verb that's probably giving it a little bit more doubling. I wanted it to sound like that kind of like Miami. It almost has this like Miami Bad Boys 1 soundtrack, Michael Bay thing happening. Almost like the Korg M1 famous house piano is what I want it to sound like. Kind of add some like really good counter too, because like the bass, I wanted the bass to be very bah, 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 like really on the beat, right? And then you have the piano kind of going which is like a house rhythm actually. And then we have this clean Juno that happens on the downbeat as well. Just a funky Juno, as you see, I use that in everything. It's going to an LFO bus, which is just ducking it so that it's ducking on the downbeats. Oh, that's also going through a flange and a heavy chorus. And then a space designer, like short verb. So this is another synth that's happening. I believe that's from my bass station. It only happens in the intro because there was singing happening and it was getting lost anyway. And it's like, if you can't hear it, like just take it out. It's just taking up space. And then we get this like washy moment, as I would call it, in the pre-chorus where the drums kind of drop out and we get this like lush piano vibe. I'm sure this was probably a keyscape thing that I played and then bounced it down. With a section like this, we have a strong intro, we have a pretty strong verse with all of our drums in, and then you want a moment, a little breather where you kind of pad it out and it's like, I've landed on like a cloud or something, so that when we get back into the chorus, there's like no pads happening, right? You just have like staccato moments. And I think it provides like a good contrast for pre-chorus going into a chorus. That little lead is just a silent, a little funky situation that I made. It's got a micro shifter on it to make it sound more like 80s funk, you know what I'm saying? Chorus. Little squirrely boy. And then as we approach our second chorus, we're gonna get this. Super West Coast, I call it the G whine. This is also going to the LFO tool so that it ducks a little bit with a lot of the other synths. It's getting a little bit of a delay. Also, here's another thing that's happening in the guitars. So I just chopped that wah guitar, this one that's happening in the chorus. So I just chopped it keeps our momentum going. Also, I got our gang claps happening here. It's almost like a dance build-up, right? Gotta have your cashmere sweeps. Classic. That's such a good cashmere sweep. 10? Come on. Coming to a city near you. As far as synths go, that's it. Oh yeah, there's one more thing in here. This thing. This is actually from my Juno 106. Juno 106 right there. Got like a little Dr. Dre West Coast vibe. It's all about just like the little elements. My production style, because I got my start in the electronic world as a singer, and so I learned a lot of my production tips and tricks from the dance producers that I was working with. Madian and producers like that. Complextro, electro, new disco, kind of funk house. So that's where I learned a lot of stuff from those people, and I think that brought me a lot of my inspiration mixing that with my West Coast being raised in LA. I think that's part of the reason I like to chop samples a lot. I love things popping in and out. Sounds really cool to me, I guess. So that's why I like to take little bits from here, maybe play a little section, play some piano, take something from the Juno, and it's not like happening in the whole song. It just like happens as a moment that adds a little interesting texture, I guess. It makes my sessions look like a fucking mess. And trust me, in my mind, it's a mess, and it takes a lot to organize and to get to sound right. Hopefully it sounds cohesive. All right, so let's get into these vocals. Obviously, Scott and Mitch are A+ world-class singers. So this is chorus. We have
single ladies, got no ring on your hand, baby, I'll be.
Scott, middle, left, right. We got middle, left, right. This is a band where 2 lead singers. There's not like a backup singer and a main singer, so making them both priority and mixing that together is like a little bit of a challenge, but I think their voices are so different but work so well together that it's not that hard.
Single ladies, got no.
So we've got Scott in the low octave, Mitch on the high octave, which he does so well, and then we've got some additional fun Mitch harmonies. Ladies. These were printed down. They had like a big like chorus microshifter probably on them. I really wanted them to sound Prince or something like that, or like D'Angelo by way of Prince. And then actually it's funny, I didn't remember recording vocals on this, but I guess I did because ladies. I think we just had finished the song pretty much, and when I was doing the finishing touches, I thought we needed more harmonies, but I think they were on tour. So instead of going through the hassle of having them come in the studio to literally just say ladies, I just did it myself. So together,
single ladies.
And as far as processing goes, channel EQ, popping the high end up, dropping the low end a little bit.
Single ladies.
This R compressor really isn't doing a whole lot.
Ring on your hand, baby, I'll be your.
Also, this got mixed by Miles Walker, so I think I knew going into it, like, I just need to get the vocals in a good, decent place. But Miles did an incredible job mixing it, so should have him do a tutorial on what he did for that. We have that. Then we have the R channel.
Single ladies.
Doing a little bit more. Breaking down.
Got no ring on your hand, baby.
Compressing about 3 dBs out of that. It's also boosting the high end again.
Single ladies.
It's boosting a lot in the high. We're boosting 10K and we're boosting low mids and highs, and then it's not doing anything to the lows at all. And then we have the de-esser.
Single ladies.
Got a lot of single sexy ladies. So we had to do a decent amount of de-essing. Also, by the way, like there's a lot more processing than you normally see because I just use the SM7 like straight into the Apollo. I'm not like a big gearhead. I don't have a ton of stuff, so it does take a little bit more mixing in the box. An SM7, I see it as like one of the best blank canvases you can get. However you need this mic to sound, you can get it to sound. It just takes a little bit more work on the back end. And after you do all this stuff, you can get it sounding as good as like those $10,000 mics. Anyway, then there's another de-esser.
Single ladies.
I just want to make sure we have our bases
got
covered.
No ring on your hand, baby. I'll be
We've
your
got
standing
our
man for the
Trans
night.
X Multi on the Pensato Lomo Voc. I used to use this a lot. Boosting the low end, making sure that, you know, we still have that girth in the vocal. C6 is boosting
got
our
no ring on your hand,
high end.
baby. I'll be your standing man for the night.
And then
sexy ladies. No, I ain't.
And then we've got our Teletronics.
You gonna be my queen for the night.
LA2A. And I feel like the LA2A is like compressing quite a bit. Like you can see it's
single
busting
ladies
down like -10. So it's really just doing a lot. My process is a little bit different now. I've obviously learned a lot in the last like 5 years. I think this process kind of makes sense. It sounds good in a mix. It sounds decent. It is doing obviously your subtractive EQ and some additive EQ at the front and de-essing. So it's getting rid of a lot of like the harsh frequencies or a lot of your like wild low frequencies before we're hitting it with like the heaviest compressor, the LA2A at the end that's just kind of smashing it. So it makes sense. There's definitely been some improvements since this chain, but here it is. This is what it is. As far as effects go, we have it going to a short room reverb, not a lot. A longer room reverb. It's also going to a phaser. I was in a phaser phase, I guess you could say. I don't use phaser on vocals unless like there's an effect it needs. There's a short delay. There's a doubler, like the Waves doubler, you know, this one. Make sure you take out the direct signal always. Then we got a micro shifter on there as well. And then of course the Aphex Vintage made by Waves. I love that plugin. The Aphex is absolutely necessary. Without it,
single ladies.
With it,
single ladies.
And I'm sure when Miles was mixing it, I could hear that there's like a frequency in there that's less than optimal. I let Miles take care of that. Praise him. So that's the chorus. Now we've got the second verse.
Girl, I'll be sleeping in your bed.
Scott's singing the main, Mitch is singing the
Watching
background.
old reruns
Awesome.
of Friends.
Also, the lyrics of this verse are hilarious. We had so much fun writing this song.
No, I won't ever make a move for you, no. But I heard your brother's pretty
This
cute.
one
All my independent lady.
So then we get into the pre-chorus, and we have Mitch is kind of the lead in the pre-chorus. So I have Mitch on top, middle, left, right, and then Scott singing the low octave there.
On my take a shot or
And
two.
get back into the
Dancing
chorus.
away with you. Single lady.
Now we start getting some ad-libs to add
Got
a little
no
bit of
ring on
energy.
your hand, baby. I'll be your standing man for the night. Oh, sexy ladies.
Let me just say, like, Scott and Mitch's ad-lib game is, I don't know any other singers that are this precise. Like, a lot of times singers, including myself, have to kind of take some hours to kind of like sing where they're going to place them, you know. They just like off the top of the head. It's like, okay, look, give me 2 passes. I gave them each 2 passes, and this is what they came up with. I just like picked and choosed where they sound great all
No,
the time.
I ain't on your team, but you gonna be my queen for the night. Just a night. All my ladies.
Now we have the bridge.
Yeah, handsome man.
All these gang vocals. You know I love gang vocals.
If you out here single as hell, just raise your hands. Just raise your hands. You're amazing. You're a perfect 10. You're a perfect 10, baby. If you out here single as hell, just raise
Then we get
your
this
hands.
incredible ad-lib by Scott right here.
All my independent ladies, all my independent fellas. I'm just.
Let me just run that back for a second. Let y'all hear that raw. You like think he's done, but he's not done. He keeps going, and it keeps getting better somehow. Fun fact, with these gang vocals, we just continued to sing the same part over and over again and stacked them up. But we happened to have a bunch of friends over at the house. I had this tiny, tiny shoebox studio. I actually have a video of it. I'm gonna put it up so y'all can see it. It was literally like zoned as a pantry. And that's how big the studio was. I could like barely fit a love seat in there for people to sit. Is that couch comfortable?
I'm very comfortable.
much
Just
comfortable.
relaxing over here.
We all crammed in there. It was me, my roommate Betty, who at the time, our friend Brayton Bowman, another great singer, our friend Vincent, another great singer, Scott, Mitch, friend Sarah Pendleton, who's like another great singer. Our friend Jacob and Aaron were like visiting from Florida. They were like coming to see us. So we had like all these people. And so me and Scott and Mitch were just like working on the song, and they were doing something else. And we was like, oh, come in here, like learn the song really quick. We need these gang vocals. I'll play it for you guys. Here's like the one. So we obviously stacked that with some more of Scott and Mitch. And also you could hear a lot of the track in the background because I didn't have enough headphones for everybody, obviously. It was like a small home studio.
All my ladies, yeah, handsome man. Come on. If you out here single as hell, just raise your hands.
That was a really fun time, and I'm glad that I have a video of it. Then we get into the last chorus.
So let's take a shot or two. Dance the night away with you. Single ladies, got no ring.
Go on, Mitch.
Be your standing.
Also, Mitch has another great ad-lib right here. Off the dome right there.
Hey, hey, woo. To my sexy lady.
All right, so that was Sexy Ladies by Superfruit. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you want to see any other songs that I've worked on. Just let me know in the comments. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok. And I think we should hassle them to make a second record. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, like. That'll help me out a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching Meet My Beat. See you next week.